And this is you say the United States government does not give in to demands, does not pay hostage, does not pay ransom. But how is what the Jordanians are talking about doing any different than what the United States did to get the release of Bergdahl and releasing prisoners held at Guantanamo Bay to the Taliban, which is clearly a terrorist organization?
Sure. As you know, this was highly discussed at the time, and prisoner swaps are a traditional end-of-conflict interaction that happens. As the war in Afghanistan wound down, we felt like it was the appropriate thing to do. The president's bedrock commitment as commander-in-chief is to leave no man or woman behind. That's the principle he was operating under.
Isn't that what the Jordanians are operating under?
Well, I think, John,
the Taliban is still conducting terrorist attacks, so you can't really say that the war has ended as far as they're concerned.
Well, I'd also point out that the Taliban is an armed insurgency. ISIL is a terrorist group, so we don't make concessions to terrorist groups. We feel
the Taliban is a terrorist group.
I don't think that the Taliban is an armed insurgency. This was the winding down of the war in Afghanistan, and that's why this arrangement was dealt.
Yesterday, it was said that the United States government, that the White House does not consider the Taliban to be a terrorist organization. I'm just wondering how that's consistent with what I believe is the designation that the Treasury Department has on its list of specially designated terrorist groups, which clearly lists the Taliban. So does the administration consider the Taliban a terrorist organization or not?
John, the reason that the Taliban is listed on this description that you have put forward here is for two reasons. One is they do carry out tactics that are akin to terrorism. They do pursue terror attacks in an effort to try to advance their agenda. And by designating them in the way that you have described, does allow the United States to put in place some financial sanctions against the leaders of that organization in a way that's been beneficial to our ongoing efforts against the Taliban. Now, what's also true, though, John, is that it's important to draw a distinction between the Taliban and al-Qaeda. The Taliban has resorted to terror tactics, but those terror tactics have principally been focused on Afghanistan. Now, the reason that we're concerned about that is there obviously are a significant number of American personnel, including American military personnel in Afghanistan, that are in harm's way. The Taliban is a very dangerous organization, and what the president has pursued is a clear strategy for building up the central government of Afghanistan and the Afghan security forces so that they could be responsible for security in their own country and take the fight to the Taliban. That, however, is different than the strategy that we have pursued against al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization that has aspirations that extend beyond just the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Al-Qaeda and their affiliates around the globe have sought to carry out terror attacks against Americans and American interests all around the globe. And that explains the difference in classification. But there is no doubt that both of these organizations are dangerous and have drawn our attention. After all, there are a large number of Taliban fighters that have been taken off the battlefield thanks to U.S. efforts and thanks to the courage and bravery of our servicemen and women.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the Taliban engages in, quote, tactics akin to terrorism, but you don't actually consider them a terrorist group.
They have a different classification. They have a classification that does allow us to pursue financial sanctions against them that have succeeded in limiting their capability, that have been effective. And that is different than an organization like al-Qaeda that has a much broader global aspiration to carry out acts of violence and acts of terror against Americans and American interests all around.